So
do you guys know her? Or?
No, we were downtown on Friday night. But as we were leaving, saw her walking by herself, and was very concerned, just because she seemed extremely intoxicated. And there was a car of men who had rolled down their window and started to talk to her. I walked up and kind of took her arm and said, like, do you know where you're going? And you could tell she didn't really know what was going on.
Warning, some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Monster Among Us. For today's video, we will be looking into the case of Sasha Samsudean. This story will take place in Orlando, Florida. The year will be 2015 back in October. Sasha was 27 years old and she was working as a social media manager for an Orlando real estate agency. Sasha's job required her to show houses and apartments for rent and to advertise the benefits of living in the property she offered. Sasha was great at her job when she first started. She was in a part-time position, but that quickly changed. She became a director of operations, which was the same as a manager. Sasha also recently moved into her new apartment in the middle of downtown, a beautiful place. It was a high-end apartment Sasha worked hard to achieve. Her apartment had an amazing view. Besides reaching her goal, she also had a caring and loving family and friend group surrounding her. She had tons of friends that she would hang out with on a regular basis. Her friends remember Sasha as the life of the party and said that she would never fear anything. Friday, October 16th was the last day of the Orlando City soccer season. Sasha was a fan of soccer and she loved to show her support. On that day, everyone who loved soccer was watching their final game of the season, Sasha included. When the Orlando Lions won, Sasha and her friend Anthony decided to go out to their local nightclub with a few friends and have some drinks in celebration of the victory. They would normally go to this nightclub, so nothing was different for them. They walked into the nightclub and got some drinks like they would any other time. After having a few drinks and a few dances, for some reason she told her friends she was leaving. No one thought anything about it because that was something they always did. They would hang out for a few hours and then split ways but meet back up later at a different nightclub. Everyone thought she was going to hang out with some other friends at a different club and they would meet back up later that night. After giving hugs and kisses, Sasha gathered her things and headed out to the exit. It was 12:30 when she decided to leave the nightclub. The next morning, she was supposed to have lunch with her friend Anthony, to which she never showed. Anthony thought maybe she was still at home sleeping from having fun last night, and it wasn't far-fetched that she could be having a hangover. Anthony tried to call Sasha, but it just rang and rang with no answer. After Anthony texted her saying, "Hey, I hope everything is okay. Call me when you see this." He never got a reply back from Sasha. Anthony thought it was weird that she never answered and didn't show up, but he just chalked it up to her having too much fun. Anthony told himself he would give Sasha a few hours and after that, he will begin to worry. After waiting a few hours, it was 3 p.m. and Anthony still didn't hear back from his friend Sasha, so he began to get scared. What got him more worried was that Sasha was always active on social media, and she wasn't even doing that. He started to call her friends and asked them if they had seen or talked to Sasha. They stated they haven't seen her since last night when they went out for drinks. Some of her friends haven't spoken to her since she was at work. Around 5 p.m., Anthony called their two close friends and asked if they would come with him to check out her apartment. He wanted to see if maybe she was sleeping or she just lost her phone. He was hoping for a simple explanation of why she wasn't answering anyone. When arriving at Sasha's apartment, as they entered the parking garage, they spotted Sasha's car. Besides having plans with Anthony, Sasha also had plans to go out to a baby shower as well. When walking up to Sasha's car, you can still see the gifts in the car, so it was easy to assume she didn't make it to the baby shower. Everyone decided to go to Sasha's apartment to see if she was inside, and when they arrived at her door, Anthony knocked but got no answer. They tried to bang harder on the door but still got no answer. They then tried to call her, but the phone went straight to voicemail. After all their attempts to try and contact her, they called 911.
Hi, I need to fill out a missing persons report. We went to her apartment to go check. She's there, and she's on.
And what is her first name?
Her first name is Sasha.
That one was the last time you saw her? Is this peculiar for her? Has she not done this before? Is she suicidal? Do you think she would hurt herself or others?
Officers arrived at Sasha's apartment and walked up to her door with the building manager. Officers needed the building manager to access her apartment with the key card. As they entered the apartment, things looked normal, but there was no sign of Sasha till an officer entered the bedroom. As he was walking into Sasha's room, he can see a bit of hair and a hand leaning over the edge of the bed. As the officer got closer, you can see it was Sasha and she was brutally murdered. There was a blanket over Sasha's body, but you can see her face and you can see what looked like strangulation marks around her neck. The officers called in for a crime scene investigator and proceeded to give Sasha's friends the bad news that Sasha was no longer with them and that something tragic happened in that apartment. They all just broke down in tears after receiving the bad news. No one could believe Sasha was taken so soon. Detectives arrived at Sasha's apartment, and when investigators took a closer look, they found that Sasha's phone, wallet, and key fob were missing. They also had an overwhelming cleaning smell coming from her apartment. When looking around, they found a cabinet door open to where she kept her cleaning supplies. The smell of bleach made detectives worry because bleach would get rid of any DNA evidence, which would lead to a hard investigation. When investigators checked the bathroom, they found 2 fingerprints on the bottom lid of the toilet seat. Seeing that made detectives fear because she was a woman who lived by herself, so she won't lift the seat up to use the restroom. They found it weird and unusual. They also checked for any sign of a break-in and found nothing. So to officers, they felt like she either knew the killer and let him in, or the killer had access to get into her apartment without her knowing. One thing that was good about where Sasha lived was that it had security cameras, and the building had an on-duty security guard that would patrol and walk around the building making sure things were okay. Detectives asked on-duty guard if they had security cameras, and he explained the building is monitored by several cameras at several locations. They have them facing the entrance and exits and in some spots of the hallway. Besides that, he told them there were also cameras in all the stairwells for each floor, and the building had about 15 floors. With that amount of floors and cameras, detectives felt like they would be able to find out what happened to Sasha and who was behind this senseless murder. Only thing is that the footage was stored on an off-site hard drive, so it will take some time before they can get a hold of it. Everyone wanted to know who could do something like this to a kind, loving person. Detectives were concerned about how a killer gained access to Sasha's apartment, and without her knowledge, the detectives wanted to speak with the on-duty guard to see if he had any answers. When they started asking him questions, he stated he did see Sasha that night when she was trying to enter the building, but he didn't let her in.
There are 2 ways to get into the building. You can either use a key fob, or if you're a resident, you can dial your cell phone, the call box, and just call your cell phone. I guess there's a numerical combination. You punch into that and it'll buzz the door open. She's not able to do either. No, because she didn't have her phone with her.
He didn't know if she lived there, and all the tenants to the apartment complex had keys or a code to enter. So he felt like since she didn't do either of those things, then there was no way she lived in the complex. The security guard then explained that she slipped into the building behind another resident. After seeing her come into the building, he began to look for her since she seemed to be drunk.
So you go into the building, and what happened? And I started sweeping floor by floor to find where she was. Eventually I was able to locate her because she was stumbling around, crashing into the wall. Her footfalls were just slap, 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 slap.
What this guard was describing sounded like Sasha being in a drunken state of mind, so he offered to help.
Eventually, she did make it to her apartment, and she was trying to use the digital key number on it to get into it, but I don't know if she was inputting the wrong code or something, but it wasn't working. At which point, she thought maybe she left her keys at her car, so she asked me if I would walk with her out to the parking garage. And we went out, and we didn't even go to any car, because maybe 5 steps out. She's like, wait, I think I remember the code now. I then bring her back to the thing. She starts trying to punch in codes again, still not working. At this point, I'm like, I gotta keep doing my job. So I'm gonna go do another sweep, and if I come back and you're still not in your apartment, we're gonna have to figure out how to deal with the situation. When I came back, she wasn't there.
He described everything in great detail, from when she showed up at the building to what happened when she entered and even when he saw her leave. When Sasha left the club that night, she had to walk 10 blocks before arriving at her apartment, which meant most likely she was captured on cameras walking home, so investigators wanted to get a closer look to see if maybe Sasha was followed home. The first camera the investigator looked at was the camera near the Attic nightclub. When looking over the footage, it was easy to spot her since investigators knew what time she left the club, and she was wearing white pants that night, so she would stick out for sure. After finding Sasha on the footage, it was declared that Sasha wasn't being followed, but she was drunk. When checking other angles, you can see Sasha running, and then out of nowhere she vanished. Officers noted that 6 seconds of the film were missing, so investigators had no idea if she was running just to run or if she was running from someone. When looking at another camera angle, Sasha was also found walking with 2 girls, but it was hard to see from the blurry footage what was going on. After doing a press release on the murder and displaying Sasha's face all over the media, 2 girls showed up at the detective's office. The 2 girls were the same girls from the footage and wanted to tell detectives everything they knew about her and what happened that night.
I saw her, so...
Did you guys know her, or...?
No, we were downtown on Friday night, but as we were leaving, saw her walking by herself, and was very concerned, just because she seemed extremely intoxicated. And there was a car of men who had rolled down their window and started to talk to her. I walked up and kind of took her arm and said, like, do you know where you're going? And you could tell she didn't really know what was going on. And so at that moment got her to get into an Uber with us.
You didn't have her ID or anything, like, in her bag?
Didn't have a phone, anything like that. So,
you guys did bring her back up to the...
So we get to the red light at Orange and Marks, and she, as soon as the car stopped, she, like, left out of the car and ran across the street to Uptown Place. So she's like, this is where I live. We're like, oh, well, then that's perfect. Like, she didn't remember enough to tell us, but she recognized it when she saw it.
How certain are you that it's her? Pretty...
100%.
Okay. You remember what she was wearing?
Yes. White jeans and a purple shirt.
After everything was said and done, the 2 girls were good people, just trying to look out for a fellow girl that was a little drunk. They explained how she arrived at her apartment, but it was still no lead to who the killer was. When finally receiving the footage of the building's security camera, detectives were able to look at them and find out what genuinely happened to Sasha when she disappeared that night. Looking at the camera covering the entrance, it was noted the first time you see her was at 1:46 a.m. and she was alone, but a couple of seconds later a guy with a black shirt and gray shorts could be heard asking if she was okay, and she replied yes. Around 1:48, she was seen in the stairwell walking upstairs, and the guy wasn't there no more, so he was just a caring person that saw a young girl a little drunk and wanted to make sure she was fine. When switching the camera angle to the stairwell above, this is where Sasha should have been since she was walking upstairs, but she was nowhere to be seen. After checking a few more angles, she still was nowhere to be seen. It was confusing because one moment she was there, and then she is just gone. After checking for 20 minutes, Sasha appeared, but this time she was running, and I mean she was running as she was scared for her life, and this was at 2:06 a.m. For 20 minutes she wasn't found on any cameras, but now she is spotted running like she is in a horror movie. Then the security guard was spotted walking like Michael Myers right behind her, but he also stated that he tried to help Sasha get into her building that night, so I mean, everything is looking normal maybe. Everything looked like what the security guard explained. He walked her to get her key fob, and it seemed like his story was checking out. When the medical examiner did Sasha's autopsy, they checked for DNA and they found a male DNA on her, and it was also found out that her cause of death was due to being strangled. When looking through evidence from that night, detectives stumbled across Sasha's iPad, and on her iPad was a text conversation that took place 3 hours after the medical examiner declared her time of death, so that meant whoever was texting on this iPad wasn't Sasha. The last message on the iPad was sent at 5:12, and it just said a name. The name was Ben, and it had a number attached, so the investigators wanted to know who Ben was. They brought him down for a few questions, and this is what he had to say.
How do you know Sasha?
We dated my freshman and sophomore year of college, so we were pretty close for a long time, and then we split up, and then we've been hanging out a lot recently since, we both live in town.
When was the last time you seen her?
I saw her Thursday night. We went out downtown.
Could it have been Friday?
No.
Okay. Did you and Sasha have plans to meet that Friday night, Saturday morning?
We didn't have plans to meet. Like I said, we were texting to possibly meet up.
Who texts who first?
I want to say she texted me first. I started, late Friday night, early Saturday morning, around, midnight, 1 o'clock hour, somewhere around there. That was the last I heard from her until 5:12 a.m. Okay. And then she said then, after I got that text message, I called her. She didn't respond, and that's where I asked, call me.
What time did you leave downtown?
Well, I was at a house the whole time. I didn't really go to a bar or anything. I was at my friend's house downtown.
You were that entire all night long? You never left?
No, I was there all night.
Did you go to her apartment late Friday night, early Saturday morning at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So we watched the cameras. We're not going to see you entering that building at all?
Correct.
The last thing, Ben, do you have any problem giving us a buccal swab?
Yeah, no, not a problem.
Okay.
I'm just happy to help in any way I can.
When looking over the footage of Ben's story, they found that he was telling the truth. He wasn't spotted on any cameras at Sasha's place, and when his DNA results came back, it wasn't a match to the DNA found on Sasha's body. Detectives ended up checking more of the footage from the apartment complex, and the security guard was spotted taking out some trash which looked normal till they looked at the time. He told them he was done work at 6 a.m., but here he is at 6:30 a.m., still at work taking out the trash. Looking a little closer at the video, you see him with 2 trash bags, and those bags look familiar. They look like the bags detectives found inside Sasha's apartment. Investigators went to the apartment complex and spoke with a manager and looked at his records and his logs. Anytime he used his key card to leave it or enter the building, they had a recording of it. They found out he would never take out anyone's trash, so seeing him do that was weird. He normally wrote people up for leaving their trash out. Investigators took him back down to the interview room, where he consented to a polygraph test. It was noted that he reacted weird when asked if he ever entered her apartment. When he was asked has he ever entered Sasha's apartment, the needle jumped and seemed like that question got a reaction out of him. When he was asked did he know anything about her being choked, the needle jumped again. Investigators took that question as a sign of him not being truthful with them.
Here are the questions I'm going to ask you about that night. Okay. Okay? Yep. Did you enter Sasha's apartment that night? No. Do you know if Sasha was poisoned? No. Was she stabbed? No. Was she choked? No. Damn, those are purple. Well, you said the test lasts about 5 minutes or so? Yeah.
They asked him for a DNA sample and he was okay with that. Investigators compared his DNA to the DNA found at the crime scene and it was a perfect match. He also left a fingerprint on the underside of her toilet seat. They also found on his phone web history that he was looking up how to pick a lock and beat a lock system that matched Sasha's door lock. On October 30th, 2015, 2 weeks after Sasha's death, Stephen Duxbury was arrested for first-degree murder and attempted sexual battery. This dude was sick. No one knows why he did it, but it was just a crime of opportunity. He saw her drunk and took advantage of that after she went inside her apartment. He searched and found a way to bypass her door lock and went inside her apartment. Whatever he did, we don't know, but we do know is that he strangled her before he left that apartment, and he tried to get rid of the evidence, but wasn't successful. Truly sad the person that was supposed to watch over the building and the tenants was the monster in this case.